On our newscast tonight, the defense minister announces South Korea's military will intensify operations along the DMZ and raise the alert level in response to North Korea's secret planting of landmines. With national development and unity in mind, President Park Geun-hye and her officials have carefully reviewed a list of candidates to receive special pardons on Liberation Day. And in response to growing public concerns over the Lotte family feud, the group's chairman issues an apology and vows to make necessary changes within the conglomerate. All next on Primetime News. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Tuesday, August 11th. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thanks for joining us. We start with a spiking inter-Korean tensions.
The South Korean military has raised its military alert level to the highest footing.
A move deemed necessary since Seoul identified North Korea as the culprit behind the mine explosions at the border. Our Kim Hyun-bin starts us off.
The South Korean military has issued an alert on the country's western border, following the defense ministry's announcement Monday that North Korea was behind the recent landmine explosions that severely wounded 2 South Korean troops. Defense Minister Han Min-gu says the South Korean military will intensify its operations along the demilitarized zone.
We will not be daunted. We will conduct operations to seize control at the DMZ.
Han also confirmed that South Korea on Monday afternoon resumed its previous policy of blasting anti-Pyongyang propaganda across the inter-Korean border, and is reviewing other follow-up steps it can take. This marks the first time South Korea has cranked up the loudspeakers since the 2 Koreas agreed that Seoul would stop in June 2004. North Korea has yet to issue a response since the broadcast resumed, but in 2010, when the South said it would restart the speakers in the wake of North Korea's sinking of a South Korean warship, Pyongyang threatened to fire on the speakers. South Korea's defense ministry said on Tuesday that it will counter and destroy the source of the attack if the North decides to fire on the loudspeakers. Responding to the latest spike in inter-Korean tensions, UN Secretary General Park Geun-hye urged North Korea to respect the armistice agreement and engage in dialogue to ease tensions on the peninsula. In regards to the probe into the landmine blast, military officials say North Korea may have planted the mines ahead of a possible incursion into the south. The North might have also been trying to derail an annual round of military drills between Seoul and Washington, slated for next week. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
After 2 of their brothers in arms fell victim to North Korean landmines in the DMZ, South Korean soldiers, who are the first to respond to provocations, are feeling a stronger sense of duty than ever before. Our Connie Kim tells us the story of 3 servicemen and their recollection of the event.
These are the faces of the young men who were among the first to respond when 2 staff sergeants were seriously injured by North Korean landmines last week. The 3 soldiers held a press conference Tuesday at a military hospital where they're receiving psychiatric treatment, along with 5 others who were at the scene of the explosion. Recalling the urgent situation when 1 staff sergeant first stepped on a mine, Sergeant Chung Kyo-sung said numerous drills helped him.
I instantly yelled, "The enemy's shell is dropping." My only thought was to run to the injured troops because that's what I had to do.
Chung added that the chaotic situation, while tragic, also strengthened and reaffirmed comradeship.
While I was treating the sergeant injured in the second explosion, he was telling the first injured sergeant to stay awake.
The trauma and wounds from the bloody landmine explosions are still raw, but the soldiers are already looking to return to normal duty.
I feel ready to return to my division and carry out operations.
A determined 2nd Lieutenant Moon Chi-jun, who immediately called for medical support after the blasts, said North Korea will have to pay the consequences.
I feel like going back to the accident site and destroying North Korea's guard post. Just as our troops suffered, I am looking for an opportunity to retaliate.
It's a heavy sentiment shared by many South Korean troops along the front line. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's presidential office is calling on North Korea to apologize for landmine explosions in the DMZ that maimed 2 South Korean soldiers. President Park Geun-hye's spokesperson says the North Korean military intentionally planted the mines after crossing the military demarcation line without permission. The spokesperson urged Pyongyang to punish those responsible for violating the armistice and the non-aggression agreements between the two Koreas. And President Park has expressed concerns about North Korea's growing nuclear ambitions. In a meeting today with visiting British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond, she said Pyongyang continues to rebuff denuclearization despite international momentum following Iran's nuclear deal. During talks, Hammond strongly condemned the North's landmine attack in the DMZ as a violation of the two Koreas' armistice agreement. President Park vowed to keep applying pressure on the North with a strong deterrence.
President Park Geun-hye is reportedly finalizing a list of people to be pardoned to mark the 70th anniversary of Korea's Liberation Day. She is not expected to go easy on the country's business leaders, though. Our Han Da-eun tells us more.
국가 발전과 국민 대통합을 이루기 위해서 사면을 실시할 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 관련 수석께서는 광복 70주년 사면에 대해서 필요한 범위와 대상을 검토해 주기를 바랍니다.
President Park requested the Justice Ministry hold a committee meeting Monday to decide who's eligible for special pardon. Yonhap News Agency reports a high-ranking member of the ruling party said Park is placing a tougher standard on pardoning Korea's business leaders, and not many are expected to receive amnesty. The president was expected to pardon SK Group chief Choi Tae-won, Hanwha Group chairman Kim Sung-yeon, and former LIG Next One vice chairman Koo Bon-sang. But there's now speculation some of them were crossed off the list after heated debates during the Justice Ministry meeting. Some pundits say Lotte's recent family row over the control of the gigantic retail company and the public's growing anti-Lotte sentiment are likely to have a big impact on the Justice Ministry committee members and the president's decision. Some also point out President Park, as one of her campaign pledges, vowed to curb the chaebol influence in Korea and regulate cross-holdings to weaken the power of conglomerate families. The final list of the special pardons is expected to be announced during the cabinet meeting scheduled for Thursday. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Over at the National Assembly, the jam-packed August extraordinary session got off to a good start today as lawmakers passed several bills to help the Korean economy get back on track. For details, we turn to our Kim Young-gil.
Lawmakers passed a handful of long-pending economy-related bills into law at the National Assembly on Tuesday.
We were able to pass bills to improve the people's livelihoods. We will do our best to make the August extraordinary session fruitful and to avoid political wrangling.
The bills include measures to ease regulations on construction of new public housing in urban areas. There is also support for projects to build high-tech industrial complexes and accompanying business incubators that will bolster fledgling startups and venture enterprises in Korea. Lawmakers also voted on resolutions to overhaul Korea's disease management system and conduct an audit of government agencies overseeing the MERS outbreak. Apart from that, lawmakers also deliberated over a motion from the Justice Ministry to arrest a lawmaker accused of influence peddling. Park Geun-hye, who left the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party on Monday amid the allegations, is suspected of receiving nearly $300,000 in illegal political funds in exchange for aiding a businessman. MPD spokesperson Lee Yeon-ju said party leaders would give the motion careful consideration before making a decision. Park's arrest is subject to parliamentary consent, as sitting lawmakers are immune from arrest while the assembly is in session, and the matter must be put to a vote within 72 hours. Although lawmakers did make some progress on Tuesday, they still have more contentious issues on their agenda for this session, including conglomerate and labor market reforms and a series of allegations against the spy agency. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
We have new numbers showing that Korea has one of the highest ratios of businesses to GDP in the developed world, fueled by a large number of self-employed small business owners in the country. But according to our Song Ji-sun, the figures, there's more to it than meets the eye.
Korea has the highest ratio of businesses to GDP in the OECD. As of 2013, Korea's GDP was $1.4 trillion, and there were 4.8 million businesses in the country. According to a new OECD report out this month, that translates to a ratio of 3.33, the highest among member nations. The report says this is due to the high number of self-employed business owners in the country. Self-employment accounts for over a quarter of Korea's total employment at 27%. Over 90% of small businesses with less than 10 employees are classified as self-employed, either with or without employees. However, low productivity is a concern for self-employed entrepreneurs. The OECD report also notes that productivity at Korean companies with less than 10 employees is the lowest among member nations.
Korea has one of the highest rates of new business openings, but it also has a high shutdown rate because many people begin without enough preparation or knowledge. It is crucial that they diversify their businesses, which are largely limited to food and beverages. Also, the government needs to guide self-employed business owners as they get started.
Local experts say self-employment is largely involuntary here in Korea, as many small business owners have been left with few options but to start their own business in order to make a living, including baby boomers who re-enter the job market after retiring. 송지선, Arirang News.
The chairman of the country's fifth largest conglomerate, Lotte Group, has issued a third apology to mitigate the growing negative sentiment against the retail giant.
In a statement, Shin Dong-bin vowed to make an effort to increase transparency and restructure the group. For this report, we have our Kim Min-ji.
The chairman of Lotte Group has issued another apology for the escalating family feud over control of the Korea and Japan-based conglomerate. Shin Dong-bin's apology comes as the Korean public turns increasingly impatient with the ugly family fight, which has exposed weaknesses in the group's management structure and prompted a government probe.
We failed to put in much effort to improve our governance structure and boost transparency. We'll reform agendas that have raised concerns among Koreans, the government, our shareholders, employees, and contractors.
Shin said the group will resolve 80% of the problems with the group's complicated cross-sharing holding system within the year. He also pledged to list Hotel Lotte, the de facto holding company of the group's operations in Korea, in an apparent move to make the firm's management structure more transparent. Shin also emphasized that Lotte Group is a Korean company, saying sales from Korea account for more than 80% of the group's total sales. The remarks seem to be aimed at countering the widespread anger against Lotte and steering nationalistic sentiment. Meanwhile, Japan's Lotte Holdings will hold a general shareholders meeting on August 17th, which is likely to help determine who will head the sprawling company. Lotte has been mired in an ugly succession battle as the founders' two sons, Dong-ju and Dong-bin, struggle to bolster their grip on the group, the country's fifth largest conglomerate. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And for a closer look at the significance of the apology and some insight into the continuing bitter succession battle in Lotte Group, we are now joined by Lee Ji-soo, an attorney with the Law and Business Research Center. Thanks for joining us, attorney.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, first off, let's start with the obvious question that's going to be at the tip of our minds right now. One of the key points Shin Dong-bin made in his apology today was that he would resolve Lotte governance structure this year. In your opinion, is that a feasible plan, and how will he accomplish such a lucrative goal?
Whether it is a feasible goal or not depends whether he firmly secured control over two entities. One is Lotte Holding Company in Japan, and the other one is the L Investment Company. Since if you look at the governance structure of the Lotte Group, those two are located at the top of the governance structures. I think while the announcement that he made today is feasible, yes.
Well, in the speech, in the conference that he made today, he also emphasized Lotte's group's Korean roots, a move apparently aimed at countering the widespread anger against Lotte, with some Korean consumers even boycotting the group's goods and services. How much do you think this fight could hurt Lotte's business in Korea? Well,
you first have to understand, the Lotte's business compared to other chaebol groups. I mean, Lotte, their major source of their revenue comes from the consumer goods. They have, they sell most of their products directly to the consumers, and not much, in the heavy part of the industry. So, group reputation is extremely important for the Lotte Group. It is about time that he have to, resolve this issue at once. I'm not sure how much good job he did today.
Well, 37 CEOs couldn't be wrong, backing him up. Well, in other side of the story that's going on is that the government is trying to be more active in terms of making sure there are changes to make sure Korean corporations are structured and managed the right way or the different way from the traditional chaebol structure. In your opinion, what can the government do to make sure these changes are very effective?
Well, it won't happen overnight. For the past 16 years, immediately after the Asian financial crisis, we've implemented many new rules, and we try to enhance our corporate governance system, but none of them been quite effective. Also, people's understanding of, chaebol's role in this country must change. Yes, it is true that they have significantly contributed to our growth, for sure, for the past 20 to 30 years. Is it possible in the future? And many experts do not agree. Whenever the government wants to introduce some kind of a new measure, there's a fierce resistance from the from chaebol side. The current president has only 2 years remaining, and so it takes much more than that. And when she became the president of this country, she vowed that she will implement some of the economic democratization measures, but this government hasn't been successful in that aspect. Yeah,
it sure is going to be a very long-term project to reform the conglomerate's opaque governance structure. But going back to the Lotte feud, we're going to soon see the shareholders voting of Lotte Holdings, which is the de facto holding company of the whole Lotte Group. Right. What is your take on this vote, and why is this meeting so important?
Well, it seems like, at least up to this point, it seems like Shin Dong-bin has a bit of upper hand. And the reason why it is important, the shareholders meeting of Lotte Holdings, is because, as I told you before, they stand at the top of the structure. So, if that entity is already controlled by Shin Dong-bin 100%, whatever he promised today becomes a bit more feasible scenario.
Well, I guess that's pretty much it for today. Thank you so much for making time for us, Mr. Lee Ji-soo, attorney with the Law and Business Research Center. We hope to turn to you for your pearls of wisdom next time.
Thank you.
For today's top international news headlines, we turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus: Greece finally agrees on a bailout with its creditors. China devalues its currency, and Japan restarts its first nuclear reactor since the 2011 Fukushima disaster.
Sun-ho, let's start out in Greece, though. It seems Athens can let out a sigh of relief with this deal. What did they agree on?
Well, aside from some minor details, Greece and its lenders finally reached a consensus after a long, winding talk held throughout the night. The grueling 23-hour session ended Tuesday with Greek officials emerging from an Athens hotel to announce the outcome.
There are one or two small issues, but we are almost there.
Now, the package is expected to be worth nearly $95 billion in new loans for Greece. The officials say they expect this third accord to pass in Parliament on either Wednesday or Thursday, where it then will be sent to Eurozone finance ministers who will review it on Friday. If passed, this will pave the way for Greece to pay back its debt of $3.5 billion to the European Central Bank by August 20th. Greece has been fighting austerity terms laid out by creditors for much of the year before finally giving in to the pressure of being expelled from the Eurozone. And heading over to China, Beijing devalued its nation's currency, causing its biggest one-day loss in 2 decades, on the heels of poor economic data. Compared to any recent changes, this is a large drop for the yuan, down 2%. China's central bank says these are steps toward currency reform, but some analysts disagree, saying China is doing this to merely prop up its flagging imports, which slid 8% last month.
China's costs increased by 8.5 times. So China's manufacturing cost is only marginally lower than in the US. So this actually makes China's exports uncompetitive.
China has recently been trying to keep the yuan strong to boost domestic consumption and help Chinese companies invest abroad with ease. But rolling back this policy could be risky, as investors must decide whether to sell or hold on to the currency. And lastly, moving to Japan, the country began operating its Sendai nuclear reactor for the first time since the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant disaster, as Prime Minister Shinzo Abe seeks to reassure the public. He insisted tougher standards now mean that the nuclear reactor is safe after the Fukushima meltdown in 2011. But opinion polls still show a majority of the public oppose these measures. Protesters outside the nuclear plant, for one, were not convinced.
Firstly, these new standards that the Abe government has got the Nuclear Regulatory Agency to agree upon have just slightly raised the bar with regards to earthquakes and tsunamis, but in fact they are full of holes.
Abe and much of the Japanese industry have wanted the reactors to be restarted to stop relying on fuel imports. The Fukushima nuclear plant disaster in 2011 leaked radioactive materials and forced 160,000 people from their homes. And that wraps up your international news for now. I'll see you again tomorrow.
It was a hot day in the capital under partly sunny skies, but regions along the west coast have been seeing showers from this afternoon. And as we can see on the radar, it's still raining heavily in some parts. In fact, heavy rain advisories have been issued in southern parts of Jeollado province, and vacationers in mountainous regions, please take extra precaution. Overnight downpours can make things pretty dangerous. And it seems like this band of showers will continue to fall tomorrow across the peninsula, reaching up to 120 millimeters in some areas. But the capital will get more sun with temperatures as hot as today. So let's take a closer look at tomorrow's temperatures. The daily high here in Seoul will soar to 32 and 29 for Gwangju, while rainy regions will have cooler highs, topping out at 27 in Daegu and Busan. And as for the other regions, it seems like Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 29 and 30, while Dokdo rises to 27. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thanks for staying with us.
We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Goodbye for now.